Hi, I'm Emily Rodger, host of the Boiling Point podcast. My co-host, Dave Veale, and I will bring you thoughtful discussions with leaders who are positively impacting our world. This is The Boiling Point, where leadership and inspiration meet. Hi, Dave. We're back for another episode of The Boiling Point.
We are, and if it's okay, I'd like to go back to the last time we were together interviewing Dr. Dan Arguello. And man, what a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
And if someone's listening to this and hasn't listened to Dan's, please, Dr. Dan's, listen to that after. He makes such a compelling case for like medical missions and the fact that even people like me can go on them and be actually of help. And he suggests this Honduras date, and but fascinating the impact. So I'm still it just really resonated with me, Emily, and I'm so appreciative of you. You know, you mentioned him as a potential guest, and then just how he showed up, and what a lovely guy, and what an amazing kind of humanitarian.
Yeah, and you know it also I was thinking after that podcast recording, just around just connections and meeting people. And he is someone who I met at a fly fishing lodge in Bolivia, and how when we put ourselves out there and we're open to just conversation with people, like we find out the most incredible things, but that we need to be open to having conversation and open to learning about others and what it is that they are doing, because just how life-changing and impactful those conversations are. So yes, for listeners, if you haven't already, go back and listen to that podcast.
So actually, it's a story that comes to mind because we were talking about travel, and we'll segue this into our guest, and somehow I'm not sure how the segue is going to work. But I was on a plane from Toronto to Chicago, and all my technology died. I mean, I even shared this story before, but I got talking to the person next to me, and talk about connection. Just a fascinating person. I mean, I learned all this, interesting things, and I just had like this great, like, I don't know what it is, hour flight. And I thought, had my phone been on and everything been working, I probably wouldn't have said hi, And he actually offered me a remote battery. And so that's how the conversation, which is a kind gesture, right? And it would just, and I think, like, how many times am I missing those conversations because I'm just plugged into and just thinking, okay, I got to get ready for whatever. But what I'm really enjoying about, and have for quite some time enjoyed about the podcast, is it does cause you to stop and just have a conversation. And coaching conversations happen like this all the time as well. So, but this is just an extension of that. I find doing the podcast, and we're going to do that today with a good friend of both of ours. But before we go there, I'm just going to ask you, how many years have you been in the coaching world now?
I think 4, almost 5.
Wow. So
yeah,
in your path to getting into the coaching world, just, very straight and linear, right?
No.
Neither mine wasn't either
linear in my life.
Yeah. Well, there was and we're gonna bring in Pete Stoddart, who's a colleague of ours. His path would be similar to ours, right? It had and we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. But sorry, and I jumped ahead. You're going to introduce him, and then we will. We've got him on camera already. There he is, ready. Half an hour before the interview, all his technology working, no issues at all. The easiest guest we've ever had.
I like how you brought up, like, your trip to Chicago was the part I reminded you of, how that your tech all died.
I know. I know. That is the segue. That is the segue. That we definitely had some tech issues. Not we, Pete Stoddart had some tech issues
for the first time ever.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves, because Pete is one of those guests where Dave and I and Pete, we would just start talking, and then like half an hour in would be like, wait a minute, we should probably tell the listeners who Pete is.
I can't imagine they won't know.
Yes. So Pete Stoddart is a certified coach. He is also part of the vision coaching team and the founder of Stoddart and Company Coaching, which provides consulting services to both government and private enterprises. Pete is a graduate of the University of New Brunswick and as well as Railroad's executive coaching program, along with Dave and myself. Peter's focus is on pushing clients to reach their true potential in business and in life. He views coaching as a space to explore your own self and a way to provide a trusting sounding board for clients' ideas and goals. Pete, it is so awesome to finally have you on the boiling point. We have been chatting about this for a very long time. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It has been a long time. I think probably like last summer we started talking about it. So here we are.
And you finally made the cut. Congratulations.
Thank God. I really here we are.
And I don't want to date ourselves, Pete, but part of what's not on the intro is like your background. And you and I did an interview. I interviewed you. Like, how many years ago was that? Because you actually found, like, so as Emily, you had heard me talk about this column that I had in the Telegraph Journal, and this connection to our friend, all of our friends, Dave Stonehouse, who was the editor of the Telegraph Journal at the time, and I'd interview all these leaders, and I'd known Pete, and we were friendly with each other, but I interviewed you, Pete, for that column. How many years ago was that?
It came up because I had a flood in my basement last year, like 2 years ago, I guess now, in the winter. And you know what happens when a flood, all the boxes that have been stored somewhere come out and you look at them. And sure enough, there was this article that I had saved about, I think it was an overarching column discussion around it. And anyway, it was 2014, I think. So
incredible. So a decade ago.
Yeah.
And no technology issues back then. I think that's what you were referencing earlier.
0.0. I think it was actually on the phone. Like, I'm pretty sure that we just did it over the phone.
Yeah. And I would have recorded it and then got transcribed and old school. Well, and so Pete's life then was, I would describe him as the guy who owned these cool restaurants. And it started with Pete's Greasy Spoon.
Pete's Greasy Spoon in grade 6.
I remember that. So let's start there. Can we start there?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that was my first business plan I put together in grade 6 for Mr. Britton's class, which was when I went to Havelock School, which has now been changed to Seaside Elementary. I think they tore it down a few years ago and rebuilt that. So, and in that, I guess that was kind of my initial version of me leading into the restaurant world. I actually still have that. I still have that. I don't think it was detailed. I don't know if it would get approved by the Impact Loan Committee or anything, but certainly kind of paved the way to entrepreneurship, and specifically in the restaurant world for sure.
Did Pete's Greasy Spoon ever
No, it was a weak business plan at best. I was 12, but the premise was all the very best: have great food, have great service. I remember it was like the title page was done with stencils. Like, remember when you could highlight it and stencil the front page? Well, that's what I did, and I think that summer I started my first business after I was a paper boy in the lawn care business, of course, like many young entrepreneurs start out. Me and a friend of mine, Aaron, started, I think it was M&S Lawn Care. And so, we canvassed the neighborhood and kicked it off from there. And then I guess the hospitality end of my career ended up coming from actually being an usher at King Square Cinema, where I worked the candy bar initially and then ended up being the assistant manager before going to university, where that career translated into kind of working at the bar in university. And then I really fell in love with the hospitality industry. So that's a bit of the segue into how that whole thing connected, I guess.
and launched this, I mean, I guess you had a few restaurants, but the one that comes to mind is St. John Ale House, which is still a great establishment. And everything you're referencing, there's these St. John, New Brunswick places. But the St. John Ale House, what I always liked about it, Pete, was I go in for lunch with someone, and I'd like bringing people from away, from other cities there, because everything was locally sourced, and you generally come by the booth and say hi, like so, very, just made everyone feel welcome, and then it made me look good, like I have all these connections in the restaurant business, that kind of thing. So I always, and what's interesting, and it's a different part of the conversation, but is that really was your persona. Like for me, like this is how you were known. Probably a lot of people listening to this still know you that way. Would that be fair?
Very much, yeah. And it's been 4 years since I've sort of been out of the restaurant industry, but it's very much one of those things that when I'm walking down the street and my anybody that I meet, I mean, we did a lot of stuff over the 25 years that I was involved in that world. And it's a very community connected sort of industry. So you always have that, whether you're doing a fundraiser or an event or a beer festival or any of that sort of stuff, plus just the day to day, like there would be weeks that we would put 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people through the door in the middle of summer. I was always very conscious to, touch the tables, if you will, and really try and connect with the guests that were coming in. Because a lot of the time, like you, either they were there with someone or they were there working, or they were, but they were there regularly. And that was the biggest part of the business, was to kind of create that regular feel. So when you walk into it, it's more than just a place I'm going to eat. It's an actual experience. Right. And so that's how we end up make those connections. And nowadays, when I walk down the street, I think a lot of it happens in St. John naturally anyway, because we're a very friendly city, but it's very hard or easy or great, feels great to walk through, say, the pedway of Market Square to the city market and not stop and talk to lots of people. And I guess my wife and my 2 kids get annoyed by that, because it takes me quite a while to get through that. But it speaks to the volume of what the hospitality industry does in any community, is it really connects them, right? And I always felt like I was a bit of a connector to introducing people together and meeting them for whether it's over a beer, lunch, or organize an event, or if you're bringing in people from out of town, or just kind of showing them what's available and through the lens of tourism in St. John and New Brunswick around. So,
and I love that you bring up that word connect, because when I think of you, and like one of the words that I would associate with you is your ability to connect. And one of my first experiences of really having one-on-one time with you was when you and we went on a hunting trip together. So Dave, I was going on a hunting trip for snow goose in Quebec with a group of friends. We had an extra space available. And so I thought, I should invite Pete Stoddart. He's avid hunter. So I invited him on the trip, and him and I, so we drove up to Quebec. It was the first time that we had met in person, and we chatted nonstop the entire time. But what really stood out to me was that, you came into this group of people that you did not know, and it was as if you had known them forever. And everyone is immediately so comfortable around you. I mean, that was one of the most fun weekends of my life. But your ability to connect, to make conversation, to engage, to make people feel heard and known, and like it's such a beautiful and strong gift that you have. And it like I left for that weekend like just feeling like a better person, having had that time with you and watching you interact with others.
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. It's not a hard crowd to interact with there. It's like getting a chance to share a space with people that appreciate the outdoors and the adventure that comes with it. Some time on the road's always good, and like we had a chance to meet each other virtual and doing different things. So it was, get a chance to finally meet you in person and take a drive to a place that I had been many times with different people and share those experiences. It's great. And I'm confident that a lot of that ability has come through working as a bartender, working as the candy bar attendant at the theater. It's asking those questions to the guests, like, what do you want? And the conversation kind of starts from there, which I guess in any coaching conversation is the same as, what do you want to take from this conversation? Like, let's take it. And then getting really curious about what's happening and giving people an opportunity to speak and actually listen to them.
Yeah. And even with that, you said about how it's easy because we were all like-minded individuals who are all passionate about the outdoors. Yet I think of how many conversations we had that weekend with people who aren't necessarily in the coaching industry, but we had really deep, meaningful conversations that were not just around the outdoors. And you were such a leader in being able to have those conversations with people.
I do find people fascinating. Being able to actually like see what other people up to, like Alex talking about his whole story about how he became an artist and the fabulous work he does and how he does it and what his process is. Like, when I start hearing things like that, it just makes me want to ask more questions, I guess. And that maybe that's what opens up that connection space, because I'm actually really paying attention to what's going on in somebody else's life. And, and people are endlessly fascinating, really. And
yeah. How did you, I feel like you would have told me this, but I don't even entirely remember, but how did you and Dave, other than you making Dave look good at the ale house, how did you two first connect?
There's probably several stories because, being in the St. John business world and Dave kind of knowing, like coming into the ale house and through that sort of stuff. But, I guess one of my best interactions with Dave and memories and kind of what got us here today might be what you're asking about. And that would be, like my first coaching experience is Dave is my coach. I had, if you recall, about 4 years ago, there was this big event that happened called the pandemic, and it shut down the whole world. And it's still affecting lots of people. I was like literally, I think I was driving around and I got a phone call from a friend of mine, Joe Taylor. And he reached out to me and he said, "Hey man, like, I know you're probably going through lots of stuff right now, like many of us are." He's a local entrepreneur here in St. John. He runs Taylor's Landscaping. And he said, like I have this coach and I thought, might be something that you want to look into. I said, Joe, it's funny that you asked me that, or that you kind of just called me out of the blue, because I've thought about it for a long time. I actually looked at doing the coaching course, like probably 5 or 6 years before this. And I'm not sure, I hadn't talked to Dave about it then. But, maybe I just needed this little push right now to give him a call. And he went on to explain a little bit more about what it was and how he was using it. And he said, I just thought it might be, for some reason, I just thought I should call you. And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's all I needed," because I literally hung up the phone from him. And I picked up the phone and I called Dave. And of course he answered and said, "Okay, well, what's this look like?" And just asked me a bunch of questions on what was going on and how we were going to, what the program looked like, and, what I was looking to get out of it. And we had this fabulous conversation, which, do you want me to be your coach, or are you looking to, is there someone on the roster that you've had in mind? And, so I said, you're familiar with me, enough about me that I think it would probably save some time to kind of get to the work. And so we went to work. Like, I think it was shortly after that we started our engagement and what really started me on my first coaching experience. And what I got from it, well, not only inspired to look further into the coaching world and to sort of be an advocate for it for anybody in a leadership position or entrepreneur, but it also made me want to share it with a lot of the people that might have been in my shoes, either at the time or now or later on, to understand that there is someone out there that can help you kind of create that space to be thoughtful, have a sounding board, create some plans. And the biggest thing for me is the confidentiality of it. I mean, we all live in this world of, if I say something, who are they going to talk to? Or maybe I'm scared to say something, or maybe I'm scared to say what my deepest fear is. But I don't remember exactly how Dave said it, which is maybe the old saying is you don't know how somebody says something, but you remember how they made you feel. And I just felt instantly that I could share anything, my deepest fears, insecurities, where I was heading. And I really could just open up and know that it was going to happen and it was going to stay between the two of us. And it really allowed that space to open up for me to really explore what was possible and what I really wanted to get out of my situation, this life that we have. And so I wanted, I guess, as we went through that, I made quite a transformation. I ended up selling my businesses, and I went into sort of that brief retirement mode, which for me was really cool, but also had a lot more to do. So I wanted to do more. I didn't do anything other than hunt and fish, which is, as you know, Emily, two things that, well, I guess you both know, but that I love to do. And I got to spend some time with my family and friends for a long time. And then I had to get busy doing some other things. So I started exploring the consulting world and did a couple of gigs there. And then sort of walk down the path of what it would look like to become an executive coach and what that certification process looked like. So I remember, again, I called my coach, Dave, said, here's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you think? And he goes, why not? Like, what's getting in the way and how can I help support you? So Dave wrote me a letter of recommendation. I applied to the school and off I went to Royal Roads University. And I guess I'm kind of fast forwarding this whole story, but through that process, I got to really understand how Dave had taken that time to guide me, and what that actual process looks like and how it's individualized for us all, and how it can really truly unleash the courage that you have from within to sort of achieve what you've always dreamt might be impossible to do. So does that answer your question? Is that a long-winded way of
Hey, Pete, Emily will appreciate this. I mean, I remember we first talked about coaching, and it's a bit tricky, for me anyways, when you know someone in a different way, in different capacity. And deep respect for Pete and who he is and his businesses and what he's done and how he shows up in the community. And but I remember thinking, man, I'd really like to work with this guy because we always want to work with people that are doers, right? Like that's the biggest part about the biggest attraction when you're a coach to someone working, like who could potentially be a client, is, are they going to do the work? Right. And I describe it like, it's going to the gym is the same thing. And if you're a trainer, you want to work with someone who's actually going to put the work in. So I knew that about Pete, like that wouldn't be an issue at all. But what you did, Pete, pretty amazing. Like, and you set goals, and I mean, it's one of those really, and we haven't really you opened up the door to talk about it. So I appreciate that. Yeah. But it's amazing when someone sets goals, willing to be vulnerable, willing to go for it. You know what I mean? And as we all know, as coaches, we were just, we're kind of there along for the ride, but just to be there as a sounding board. But what Pete put into place and hit, like, like literally sometimes like within weeks of the goals that you know, in terms of timelines you had attached to them, was remarkable. Right. And then he comes around like full circle and he's like, hey, do you think I should get into coaching? I'm like, well, Pete, what, I'm just holding back, telling him what I think he should. Like, yeah, dude, come on, jump on board.
Yeah.
But it was because, having lived it. And then now that you're in the world, Pete, I predicted what I think is happening I know is happening is that, the biggest challenge you have is you'll be too busy. There'll be too much work for you. And that says a lot about, who you are and how you show up. And actually people are really like, that's, really attractive to people in terms of this is someone I want to work with. But what has it been like, for you jumping out of a completely different world? I mean, there's some definitely overlap, but what has it been like the coaching world for you and introducing it to people that maybe haven't been exposed to coaching before?
It's like incredibly fulfilling to be able to, build that trust with someone, allow them to kind of open up and share that space with you. And then to see people like you said, Dave, like especially when you have a client that's so engaged and knows what they want and just need that push or need that support and confidence to know that they're not crazy, that they actually, this is a great idea and sort of someone to help run alongside the bike. Mm-hmm. That in itself is the greatest gift that anybody can give a coach, is to really show up fully, and same as we can do for the clients is to be there and to be ready and to help them. And it really becomes this ultimate long-term sort of relationship. Like I'm still coaching the first person I ever coached, and that was 3 years ago. To me, it's a really cool profession, and not only that, but it's an opportunity to like incorporate those skills into your life. So I'm confident that this has actually made me a better dad, a better husband, a better friend, a better colleague at work, a better, just a better person in general, to apply the principles of coaching to, just how we show up. So I hope that answers your question, but I don't know if there's more that you want, but like, to me, it's just, I feel like I'm a much better person developmentally. And it also makes me endlessly curious to learn more stuff. So it really inspired me to learn the coaching process, but also to learn greater leadership skills on top of that, and more, and really get more granular on some of the thoughts of some of the great leaders that have kind of come and gone and are still around in the world today.
Yeah. And, that's something that I certainly see in you as a friend, as a colleague, as a person who I have called on before for coach me through this, is that you, like, who you are as a coach is who you are as a person. And, around this concept of like, we can only take others as far as we are willing to go ourselves. And what I heard from Dave and him speaking about you is that with you being able to do the work, then yeah, like you add that credibility, for someone like me, or for someone like whoever else who's reaching out to you to say like, hey, yeah, help partner me through, kind of walking me through this, because yeah, you're also doing the work, and how admirable that is, and that work never ends. And so for you to be constantly still like learning different ways about leadership and coaching, that it's like we open ourselves up a little bit to it, and then it's like, oof, okay, now we have a lifetime of learning ahead of us.
Yeah. I think we're kind of constant in that growth mindset, right? Like, once you start to learn certain things, and then it's about practicing it. And then, sometimes if I find myself, the kids get home from school, and I used to say, yeah, how was your day? And maybe not really pay attention too much to it. And now I say, how was your day? And they say, oh, it was good. And I say, well, what was good about it? And actually like follow it up and pay attention and be present in the moment and really understanding it. Like it was all part of, a lot of that just kind of came from coaching naturally.
Do you find that, like, and I've talked to probably both of you separately about this, that when you're coaching someone and you're seeing an opportunity and you're seeing them go for it, and you're just like, wow, we naturally find it inspiring. But then what I find the next thing is almost like you get off a call with someone who's doing something, and maybe you've, encourage them in a way that's appropriate for them. And then you kind of sit back and go, am I doing the same thing? Am I pushing myself the same way? And then all of a sudden you got to realize there's a little work I got to do here. Like, have you guys had this experience?
Yeah, I certainly have. I remember you saying that to me in a session one time. It's like, maybe I should be doing that. And I'm like, it always reminded me of it. Like, I'm kind of pushing this person, or I'm sharing my experience, or what I would, think about in this situation. Or then I'm like, I need to probably start doing that a little bit more. Like, maybe I need to get up a little bit earlier. Maybe I need to journal a little bit more. Maybe I need to write this down, or follow a calendar, or stick to time blocking, or, all that stuff. Yeah. Emily, is that just us, or is that?
No, I think that's me as well. And what I have kind of had to almost stop myself from doing is doing that a little bit, because we're all on different levels, and we're all on kind of different journeys, and we all have so many different areas where we can grow and change. And if I were to do that on every single coaching call, I would feel like I wasn't ever doing enough. And so it's also a little bit of, for me, it's like kind of, also sticking in my own lane a little bit, and knowing, or maybe being able to park something of like, oh yeah, this is something that that is of value to me, or it's standing out to me. But also not getting too kind of involved in it. Otherwise I feel like I would probably feel like I was never doing enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that's really wise. I can tell you one area though, when someone talks about the 5:30 a.m. club, I'm not getting it. I'm not doing that.
You're not in on it. So you're not going to join my 4 a.m. club.
I see emails coming from both of you very early in the morning, or I'm like, yeah, I'm out of that. But I do feel like there's these things that pop up, and so I guess the point is that from a leadership perspective is just there's this constant, like, there's never, it's a journey. You're never finished.
Yeah.
And then it'll be something that'll emerge, I find, from a conversation or or just observing a team or whatever it is. I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Pete about, like, what are you, I guess for you, and for someone who's curious about coaching, like, who are the types of clients you really like what are the areas you feel like you've brought the most value, or you're most naturally kind of suited in terms of coaching?
Well, I've had the privilege of coaching, all kinds of different dynamic, unbelievably talented people, from like North American wide sales management to doctors and nurses and daycare operators and restaurant people, and all quite a variety of people. But I think probably where I landed most is around, that authentic, young, gritty, maybe not young, I guess, but like that gritty entrepreneur that's wants to be able to share their experience and maybe have me share some of mine. And it's a place that I have a lot of road rash from. I've been, I've worked for myself for my entire adult life, essentially, and I've made lots of mistakes, and I'm happy to share where some of them got me and where some of them didn't, and I can also sort of relate to what it's like to be in those challenges, and let people kind of work through it and give them the space to think through it and build up that confidence so they can actually make decisions and also share resources and just sort of be that supportive ear. And I really admire entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm looking at 2 right now, and I think the world is made up with a lot more than we actually think about. I guess that's the world that I love to live in. And I'm fortunate enough now to coach a few that are just really amazing people that, when they have the space of a coach to kind of explore those thoughts and fears and come up with a plan about what is possible, and they get empowered to kind of like take off to the moon, they really go for it, like they really show up and they really, set those goals. And that to me is probably more so where I line up the most. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, entrepreneurship, and especially when you come from that world. But I also think what's really cool about that is sometimes the space you're most comfortable, most knowledgeable about can be the hardest place to coach, right? Because like I always say, the most challenging kind of probably coaching client for me is someone starting up a coaching company. Because I think I know how to do it, right? Like I clearly I could be way better. People could do it way better, but you have some kind of ideas, and it's really hard to just be curious in those situations.
Yeah.
So good on you to be able to, not want to jump in and maybe kind of shift over to being more of a mentor.
Yeah. And that's a real challenge I have, especially with restaurant clients.
Yeah.
It's to not do the telling and let them do the doing and the thinking. And so it certainly is. And even in the any space of that entrepreneurship world, it's being that endlessly curious coach versus the one that's like, oh, I do it, just go do it this way,
Yeah.
And, that's the power.
So Pete, like you're involved in so many different things. And like you mentioned, you're a husband, you're a dad, like you are constantly, every time I chat with you, you are on the way to like a volleyball game or like some sort of sporting event. Yet you also take time for yourself and your own passions. And, a couple of those passions being fishing, being hunting. Why is that so important to you?
One thing I discovered through my adventure and the journey of being a coach is to really understand myself more so, and sort of what my values are. Three things I really value are family, friendship, and tradition. And for me, a lot of the outdoors, brings me back to that tradition of, being at the camp on the weekend or going on a fishing trip with my dad, or taking my son. So for me, it's a couple things. One, it allows me to connect and remove myself from the day-to-day grind. Cause you're right. I think we're all busy and we're always on the go and doing that stuff. So making sure that we carve out that time to kind of remember why we're doing all this stuff is important. And then, I love to create traditions. I find the outdoor space, so relaxing, and a time to be really mindful and present and focused and excited and energized. Like, the old saying is you don't have a chance to be depressed when you're fishing, because you don't have a chance to think about much more than where's my fly going to land and is a fish going to take it. And to be able to share those experiences with other people. And I do a lot of that. And Emily, I know you always take people out too. Maybe that's my natural coach inside, but I just love to take people out. Like I took someone out 2 weekends ago, ice fishing for the first time ever. They'd never been out. We had a huge day. We fished in this tournament. They actually tied for first place, which I guess just shows how good a guy I am. But
clearly,
I open up that door for someone the same way that somebody else opened up that door for me. And so I guess that's what relates back to that whole tradition of, you're outside, you're active, you're having fun, but you're also taking that time to show someone else some of those things and how to do them and how the whole thing works. So it's important for me to share that with my friends and family, and to create these traditions like opening day for duck season and, opening day for fishing. It seems like opening day is a very big high tradition on my part, but and just making it up to the camp with your friends and doing that sort of thing is, I love it. I love it.
How do you think, or like, what are some lessons that you have kind of learned, like in those traditions, that have helped make you such a successful leader, coach, entrepreneur? How do you kind of tie those outdoor skills and what you know about yourself in those into who you are in business?
I would say that the secret to business is focus and being focused on what you're doing at hand. And when you're out in the woods and on the water, you're definitely focused on what's actually happening. You're present in the moment, and you're also build an incredible amount of patience to be able to sit in a tree stand for days and weeks and months on end and see nothing other than birds and bees. And when you're in the river wading through, you have to be present in the moment to not fall over, but also to always be ready to set the hook. So it's opportunistic. You've got to be ready. You've got to be patient. You've got to be calm. I guess these are all sort of skills that naturally happen and probably go back to our ancestral roots of survival. But, a lot of the times in business, we have to be patient. A lot of the times in coaching, we have to be patient. And I think probably the number one skill that comes from being that involved in the outdoors is just really being patient. And in today's world, that becomes harder and harder than ever, because we can pick up our phone and order DoorDash, and next thing you know, there's an ice cream coming from Dairy Queen. So we don't really even have to have that much patience. But as we're growing things and as we're growing ourselves, we have to allow ourselves to be patient and be patient in the moment and be patient with business and also be ready to capitalize on any of those opportunities that do show up.
Mm.
You got to be ready to set the hook.
That resonate with you, Emily?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because I had a call with a client just last week, and we were talking about patience, and the client was talking about how, from a work standpoint or dealing with employees, he doesn't have any patience yet in other areas of his life, and in some of those areas being like outdoor industry areas, that there's lots of patience. And I see that so often with people. And I sometimes wonder of like, why is this? Why is it that in certain areas of our life we can be so patient, but then sometimes when it comes to business or dealing with people, we have very little patience? And is that because we live in a society now more so than ever where we are used to getting those instant things? It's like we click on an email sent. Well, it's like, okay, why aren't you replying yet? Or clicking on a text message sent. Why aren't you replying yet? And so with that, like, do you find that you have that same level of patience when it comes to your day-to-day life that you do when you're outdoors?
I think that it depends on what it is. I certainly have some times where I'm less patient than others, but I certainly am a pretty patient person overall, and I think that's probably been honed over the years of, I guess I relate some of it back to my recreational activities outdoors, but also just life in general. And when you're dealing with human resources, which is probably what everybody's biggest challenge is to date, being patient with people and actually listening to them. And, so yeah, I do find it certainly is a parallel between what happens in the outdoors, how I naturally show up, and how that's evolved and developed, and how I've become much more aware of my patience over time too.
Yeah.
My patience also gets tested from time to time. I have 2 kids, and you can certainly be like, okay, I'm gonna bite my tongue here, and it's gonna be a little more patient.
I can relate.
So it gets tested from time to time, which I'm sure we can all relate to. But
Yeah. Well, Dave, I'm curious, like for you, what are some ways that you are able to kind of draw like patience into your life?
Oh, what do you turn around this on me for? Like
I mean, why not? We're all equals in here.
that's a really good question. That's a how do well, I was thinking like, you guys are really like, I'd like to be more immersed in the outdoors. I love anything that kind of forces you to escape your thinking. Right. And so the latest thing for me in the last number of months is I joined a jiu-jitsu club. And
You did?
yeah, I did. And
I've been wanting to do that.
well, I'm learning a lot. And so for me, those are great experiences for me, being a complete rookie at something. And it doesn't come naturally to me because I realize how, my ego probably needs a bit of humbling. And this is a great way to do it because it's just like, I am so out of my element. But what I notice is like an hour goes by and I'm just like, where did that time go? Right. So I find kind of immersing myself in something that's new to me. So probably going ice fishing with you, Pete, or going fly fishing with you, Emily, would be really helpful as well, because anything that's new, I find really helpful. And for whatever reason, I got to a stage where I was sort of getting comfortable and I was finding I wasn't really, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a variety of reasons, but I wasn't really getting out of my comfort zone. And when it became obvious to me, I thought, well, what's that one thing I've been thinking about doing and haven't been doing? And it happened to be jiu-jitsu. So I've been at it a few months and I can report that I'm probably no better than when I went at the first time, but I'm going to stay with it as long as my body can hold up. And that's the other thing, is it's kind of rough, but I find, yeah, whatever that new thing is really good. And I think it's for me, it's important to be a beginner and remind myself what it's like to be a beginner, because so many people are doing, really cool things and using the beginner mindset. And when when I get away from it, it's kind of gets away from who I am. So but a couple things I know we're coming to the end here, but Pete as you know, Emily, is a great follow. So on social media, people should definitely follow you. I saw something recently that you're talking about your daughter in volleyball, and it's so cool to hear, when we're so proud of our kids and how we're learning from them. But a great follow on LinkedIn and I guess your Instagram, probably Facebook. I see on LinkedIn. But the other thing I was going to mention is tradition, right? This idea of and so my neat story would be before on our wedding day, before going to the church. All the groomsmen said, we got to go out. So where do you go out to have chicken wings? Because that's naturally what you do right before you get married. We went to the St. John Ale House and we had wings, and little did I know I had a big streak of wing sauce across my cheek. Right. And of course, no one at the restaurant mentioned it to me. My buddies don't mention it to me. I'm standing in front of the church and Mary Ellen walks up knowing I've been out with them the night before. I'm like, what happened? And it turns out I've got chicken wing. But talk about a kind of a neat, like in terms of that the St. John Ale House, for me, what you created there was a place where people would have neat traditions, Pete. And I just thought I just wanted to share that story. and the fact that, my future wife walking up going, what happened? It was red wing sauce. And the fact that no one told me, like, oh my God. So anyway.
Well, I'm really glad I could contribute to your wing sauce tradition.
There we go. Yeah. Always clean your face off after.
Yeah.
So that is too funny.
That's the restaurant industry is to be the house of the tradition, right?
Yeah. Well,
whether it's Friday night, we always go for this, or on Sunday morning we go for that, and brunch, and that's what the business is built on. Maybe not wing sauce the night before your wedding, but
no, hours before.
Hours.
It's a fun story for me, and it's that entrepreneur that started with Pete's Greasy Spoon, and turned into the ale house, and kind of followed me right into a church. So one last thing is you will have done it, but there's a neat talk you're going to be doing, Pete.
Yeah, coming up on Wednesday. I guess they probably all get archived too, but I'll be speaking at the UNB alumni webinar this Wednesday. So February 28th, which will probably be archived by the time this airs, but it's still available, I think, on their YouTube channel and through that. And that's a bit of a talk about the coach approach to leadership, what coaching is, and carrying on the good word of the coaching work that we all do here at Vision, and how it's impacted and changed the world.
Cool. And I think people could probably watch at post, it doesn't have to be live, and hopefully they can watch it after the fact.
Yeah, they make them all available on the UNB alumni website, I think. So
love it. I love that you're doing that, Pete, and that so many people get to listen to you.
Yes, get to listen to me babble on about my traditions and hunting and fishing.
How
I create memories by getting wing sauce on the groom's lips moments.
Beautiful.
They say
I was just going to say, I'll give you $5 if you do it with wing sauce on the side of your face.
I do it for you for free.
Now people have to watch. Yeah. And it's got to be just sliced up the right way too.
That story, Dave, it makes me think of like how many people saw that you had wing sauce on your face and didn't say something. And then it makes me think of Bruce McLeod's one of the times that he was on the podcast, and the podcast was titled, I think, like How to Tell Someone They Have Broccoli in Their Teeth or something like that. And it's these things of like, what we see that we don't say, and for what reason. And
these guys, they knew to say, but they just thought, it'll be funny to see him go with chicken sauce on his face.
Full disclosure, I wouldn't have told you either.
I mean, it is pretty funny. Yeah.
That's how you know you're with the right friends.
I'm so glad you came on, Pete. Thank you for being part of the community, the coaching community, the coaching world, collaborating with me and Emily and others at Vision Coaching. It's been awesome. And you're such a good advocate for coaching, I think. And I just love hearing your story and, kind of sharing your experience, and really appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dave. I wouldn't be here without your sincere coaching and mentorship, and I appreciate it more than anything. And Emily, same to you. You've been a fantastic addition to my team of awesome friends that I consider to be very valuable, and I appreciate it. And I think we're probably all due for a coffee sooner than later.
Yes, we definitely are. And likewise. And so for the listeners, we are going to list all of Pete's information and any extras we discussed in the show notes. And the best place to find that is on our website. We are active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And the video version of this podcast is available on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, the podcast is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Dave, we'll see you next time. A pleasure as always.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Follow or subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, or visit boilingpointpodcast.com for more.